Okay, very good afternoon to all of you. We're going to kick off now. My name is Patrick Schmidt. I'm editor-in-chief of the Drinks Business, and and I'm delighted I'm here just to moderate this event, which is on how AI is helping to deliver personalized experience in the drinks industry. The first thing I do want to say, though, is that although this topic is quite dry, it's not a dry event. You do have some very, very fine spirits in front of you, some scotches chosen by Colin Hamden White, who I'll introduce shortly. The only thing I would say is, can you hold off drinking them until Colin introduces them? And we're going to cut through some of the topics with these spirits, so you're going to have to wait till the very end. The other thing I just wanted to say was that actually this topic is one I've looked at before. We did an event almost exactly a year ago in London on AI in the drinks industry, and we had a great time. And back then, I was really tempted to show a clip from, I don't know if any of you remember that 80s film called Weird Science. But it's like these two teenage boys, they try and use like an 80s computer with a floppy disk to generate their own girlfriends. And they managed to. So thinking about that, when it got to our own event in London, I thought maybe it's a bit risque because when she comes to life, the form is maybe not quite of the moment. This was the 80s. I thought I'd create a virtual version of myself. So we used a lip sync generator. The script was generated by ChatGPT. They took some voice recordings of me, and then I had to play a virtual version of myself to the audience. And it was so torturous. It was so embarrassing. It was so shaming, actually, that I decided not to do it today. But I have to say the other reason I didn't do it today is because I hope I've grown up a bit. I've moved on from the stage of wanting to play with all the tech to wanting to learn from it and actually use it. And kind of as proof, I let you into a little secret that we are putting our money where our mouth is, because we, as the drinks business, are generating our own AI-driven user experience, something called Just Ask DB, and we will be launching that at the London Wine Fair. So a little bit of a scoop there, but the idea is that we are playing with this software to help our own readers with AI-generated user experience. That doesn't mean I'm not learning as much as I can from what are really the best brains in AI-driven technology for the drinks industry. And I'm going to introduce them. So they are, first of all, I've got Andrew Sussman here. Andrew, who I've known because I worked with before. And you can see his bio there. But the important thing about Andrew is he is the co-founder of Preferably. Preferably is the leading B2B to C product discovery and recommendation software. And you'll be hearing more about how it works. But Andrew's got over 25 years of experience in computer technologies, so it's not all drinks based. I think that's really important. He's a named inventor on 12 patents, honored by Goldman Sachs as one of the 100 most intriguing entrepreneurs. And he's a featured speaker on many great high-profile AI events, including the WSGD Tech Life. Now, the one thing I will say in my own words about Andrew is that he is really, really clever. And by that, I mean he's one of those rare people who are bright enough to make the complex appear simple. And I was thinking, actually, it's a bit like great sports people who make their chosen game seem effortless. And the reason why I say that is I have actually been holed up in the press office where I've meant to be prepping for this, but I've been rather gripped by the downhill skiers that are showing in the Alpine World Cup. But you know how you only watch people at that level, they just make a sport seem absolutely effortless. The reality is, having just come back from my first experience of skiing in Poland, that it is really not effortless. I know how brilliant you are, Andrew. So we're going to get a demo from him shortly. We've also got Danny Cooper on my far right here. So he's the Chief Information and Digital Officer at Version Wines, a business that I know well. He's got 30 years experience in technology and digital transformation. He's led innovation across industries, e-commerce, finance, consumer retail, key roles at e-commerce leaders such as Net-a-Porter and Gusto, and he's now at Version Wise. Now, what I would say about Andrew is that he's gone from, he's gone from fashion to fresh foods, and he's now at something more long-lived, which is wine. So what's really important there is that he brings expertise from outside what is, I think it's fair to say, our somewhat archaic trade. And then we've got Jose Amado Blanco, and he is the CEO of Migros Group. Now, Jose has been CEO specifically for the purposes of this, a business called Vinarte. So it's a premium retail concept. It sells wines and spirits and beer across Switzerland. Now, Jose, before that, he founded a startup, a Swiss food tech startup called Yamo, and it produced organic food for children. He scaled that across 9 European countries to 15 employees. So he's an entrepreneur. He's been involved in startup. And I think what's interesting is that he's gone from baby food to booze. So he's been serving two very different life stages. And let's see if he thinks they have two very different requirements. Now, lastly, down the front there, skulking down near the Scotch, is Colin Hampden-White. So if you could turn around, sporting some very apt trousers. So Colin I know well. He's a TV presenter of The Three Drinkers, Keeper of the Cake. He's a member of the Worshipful Company of Distillers, worked on The Scotsman, The Times, The FT, founding editor of Whiskey Quarterly. He's done so much, a lot of judging. He judges the spirits business, IWSC, World Whiskey Awards. What I will say about Colin is not on his biog, and I always like to mention this. I first got to know Colin because he did this amazing photography series called The Greatest Winemakers. And it still is, by far, in my view, the best visual encapsulation of cellar hands that are out there. Now, those are our panelists. Apart from staying off the booze until the allotted moment that we will announce as we go along, all I want to say is do ask questions if things aren't clear as they go along, because you're here to learn as much as you can from these experts. It's quite likely that I haven't thought of a good enough question to ask them. So it's really helpful for me too, and I want you to get the most out of it. But what we're going to start with is Andrew is going to do a little demonstration. And the reason why I want to do that is because I think if you see it in action, it really helps. And it helps us understand the technology in context. So Andrew, if you can start, please, that would be great.
Thank you all. Can you hear me okay?
You know what? I'm going to move over here so I'm not standing in front of the screen.
Okay. This QR code, if you're interested, will launch you to the App Store to download the Preferably mobile app. The reason why I'm putting this up here, we have preloaded the 3 whiskeys that you'll be tasting. So if you want to be able to track what you felt about them, love, like, so, dislike them, and you'll start to build a profile, it'll be in your journal, so you'll always remember what you tasted at the tasting today. So I'm going to leave that up for just a little bit longer while you guys snap your pictures. And before I start the demo, just want to say a couple things about technology, in particular AI. I've been in the AI space, believe it or not, since 1991. It is that old. It's way older than that. In fact, our first patents were filed and received a little over 10 years ago. It is something that most people today have heard about, which when Pam and I, my co-founder Pam, when we started this, we would talk to people about AI and they have absolutely no idea what we were talking about. How many people here at this point have played with ChatGPT at least once? Right? Most everybody. That is a form of AI that we refer to as a large language model or generative AI. And I'll get into what that means in a moment. What I'm about to show you is actually something that is more along the lines of a predictive analytic-based AI, and then how it relates in the generative AI large language model world. So let me start by sharing my phone. All right. So if you've downloaded the Preferably mobile app, you will see that there's an event listed here. These are the particular products that are being poured today. Ironically, I myself am not much of a whiskey drinker, which is why we have we don't know if you're going to like it. We don't think you're going to like this one, but we do actually calculate a score of a 94 for this. Not what does an expert think, but this is my personal taste score. In the case of Colin or Pam, it's probably 100. They probably, absolutely love it. But for any of those wines, as you pull them, or whiskeys, as you pull them up, all you need to know is, do you like it or not? Or, wow, I really love it. I want to remember that one forever. Or, it's so-so. I wouldn't buy it myself. I drink it if you paid for it or you poured it for free, but I wouldn't go out and buy it. You'll see a natural break here between the appealing and the unappealing. There is no middle choice. And that's really important because we're really focused on what drives an individual's preferences. How do we make recommendations based on what individuals would like? So if I were to pull up my particular journal and show you the Longro that Pam poured for me the other day when we were in Edinburgh, this happened to be a like for me. And now if I wanted to go find other products that perhaps our merchant partners are carrying that I would find appealing, you'll see that the software has made those recommendations. Not because other people bought this, not because people who search for product A also search for product B. That sort of Amazon style of collaborative filtering, that's the old way in which recommendations were traditionally done. What we've done is actually looked at what drives an individual's preferences. The more data we have to work with, the better it works. We think of it as an expert at scale. We do have the largest group of masters of wine and master sommeliers as partners in this company that are curating the world of wine, beer, spirits, tequila, mezcal, cheese, so that you don't need to say what you like about it. You just need to know, do you like it? And the AI does the rest of it. Now, there's all kinds of stuff that we can do, whether it's food pairings, whether it's getting recommendations out of your own personal cellar, whether it's getting group recommendations for you and your friends, what would maximize the appeal across the group of you. I'm not going to go through and show all of it right now. If you're interested, find me later. I'm happy to show you more of what we do there. What I do want to show you, though, is how this relates to the world of generative AI, because everybody is very focused these days on Claude, ChatGPT, Gemini, all of the large language models, which do a phenomenal job at their task. But their task is not always the right task. In other words, we have a phrase in the United States we sometimes say, which is, just because you have a hammer, everything isn't a nail. Just because large language models exist doesn't mean that it's the right answer for every problem. So to prove that point, I did ask ChatGPT this morning. I said, I would like for you to explain what large language model-based AI is good at and what it is not good at, particularly as it relates to recommendations for wine and spirits. And you'll see that there are certain things it's very good at. Versatility and content generation, natural language understanding, training and adaptability. But where it lacks finesse, where it lacks a certain amount of analytical rigor, is personalization capabilities that are truly based on what you would find to be appealing. Data dependency, if they don't have the quality data to work with, they can't answer the questions. Static knowledge base, they tend to be trained up until a point. They're not as dynamic and live as you would need in an everyday situation. So what does that mean? So let's say, because this is spirits-based, I'm going to ask it our version of large language model, a question having to do with whiskey. Now, when asking this question here, I am going to start with, let's say, I like Hill Rock Solera bourbon, but I can't find it on your site. What else would you recommend? Now, this right now happens to be tied into the Winehouse in Los Angeles' inventory. And it's looking at this question. The large language model is understanding that the intent of the question is one that has to do with a similar tasting product question. Often a consumer, and I apologize, the internet has been a little wonky for me here and today, so I might have to restart my window. Oh, is it? Well, it's okay. It shouldn't matter. We'll start this over. The similar tasting products are often a question that come up with consumers. They're looking for a particular product and they can't find it. For example, we often have a lot of private label products with our merchant partners, and consumers may not know those private label products, or they can't find them at other retailers. And so the would you recommend? So what the software has to do is not only understand that the subject matter is a similar tasting product, but that the nature of the question is saying what, based on that subject matter, would be good taste alternatives. Not because somebody wrote about these in the same article, but rather what the winehouse has present, what would be a good choice, and in this case, the Old Forester. Now, if I wanted more information, can you describe the taste profile of the Old Forester 1910? Now, we curate the world of wine, beer, and spirits on up to 800 different attributes and traits that describe why things taste the way that they do. And you'll see that it was able to reach into that information and pull out a description based on the information provided. Old Forester 1910 is sweet, medium-bodied, pronounced oaky notes with vanilla, caramel, chocolate, wood, smoke, and nutty flavors. But to prove the point that this isn't just being hard-coded, if I said, can you describe the taste profile for the Old Forester 1910 in the tone of someone from Kentucky? Now, what I've done here is actually injected a prompt into the decision making so that it's actually looking at how would somebody from Kentucky phrase this. So it's not a hard-coded data analysis, but rather it's using the large language model to understand intent and then convert it into a conversational response based on that tone, whether it be, Virgin's brand tone or Vernarte's brand tone. It would be able to take that into consideration in its output. So that's just a quick overview to help you understand that the nature of large language models, the generative AI solutions, there are things that they're great at. And then there are some things that require more specific analytical AI. And that's ultimately what's underlying everything that we do. It's all content-based. It's all based on the fact that we are tasting and curating millions of products on up to 800 attributes and traits, not on the basis of do we think it's good or not. This is truly an objective, calibrated, consistent way of curating these products across the various categories.
So I'm going to come back now. We can't because I was muted because I was too near the speaker, I think. What I would like to do is that opens up a ton of questions, but I'd like Colin at this stage to do two things for us, if that's okay. One is to introduce us to glass number one. And the other thing is introduce us to why an expert like you is working for Preferably and what it is that you do, so that we can understand a bit more about the role of the expert in this software. Thank you. Oh, thanks so much. Good.
Okay, is this not? Yes, it's on. Fantastic.
Right, come up to the stage you want, Colin, so that it doesn't interfere yet.
Okay, I'm going to do the whiskey first because that's more important, really. I wanted to take us through just a very short journey. These are single malts, they're not blends. And single malts are generally split up into three major categories. There's whiskies that are matured in ex-bourbon casks. That's about 90% of the single malt industry is ex-bourbon casks. And that's one of these. The next one has got sherry, and the one after is a blend of both with some peat. So that's the general little story we're going to go to. But the first one we've got here, it's Ben Rennis Distillery, which you don't normally see as a single malt. It's a component in Johnny Walker, and it's a 25-year-old from 1997. It's at cask strength, but it's not too strong. This one is a 48.2, sorry, this one. So it's not too strong, which is why we haven't got water. We don't need water on the tables, I don't think, for this. And it's very typical of ex-bourbon. It's got caramel and vanilla. It's pretty fruity, and it's pretty smooth, and it's very easygoing. And that should introduce you to that flavor that an ex-bourbon cask gives over quite a long period of time, 25 years. So that's the first whiskey. What do I do for preferably? Well, I write a lot of the data, the tasting notes, and I translate those tasting notes and characteristics of spirits and wines into numbers. So I can write a lot of tags, which I do, which are the flavor profiles of the different whiskies, like this one. But then I also put into numbers on the scale of its texture. What's the alcoholic integration? What's the wood integration like? How finessed is it? What's the complexity of it? And there are many other different categories that we will then put into some scale. And then, as far as I understand it, then the AI has some numbers to work with. We need a lot of numbers. So I have to taste a lot of whiskey, which isn't such a bad job. But yes, that's kind of what I do. I love doing it. It's different every day. And that's really all I could ask for in a job.
Great. Thanks very much, Colin. Now I want to move over to our other panelists. Andrew, you're not off duty, don't worry. But I'll start with Danny, actually, my far right. So Version Wines obviously sell other drinks as well. Very powerful and long-standing online retailer with a long history of being pioneering on the digital sphere as well. Now, how are you using AI to deliver personalized recommendations for your customers? I think might be a good place to start.
Yeah, can you hear me okay? Yeah, it's an interesting one. We carry, I think, 900 different products. We have 150,000 customers. And if someone comes into your shop and says, what would you like? And you can have that conversation with them and recommend a really good wine to them, by understanding what their personal preferences are, what they've had in the past. Trying to do that when you've got hundreds of thousands of products and customers that you're shipping every year is an incredibly difficult thing to do. And coming from the fashion industry and the food industry, really understanding how personalization really affects you as a consumer is that piece of added value that you can really offer as a supplier to a customer to say, this is the kind of stuff that you're really going to like, or this is the product we think you're going to like best, is crucial, especially when you're carrying such a broad range of products. But just simply using AI isn't that straightforward because AI can't taste a bottle of wine. It can't taste a whiskey. And I think that's one of the things that we really recognized in terms of using this as a potential product personalization is that there is a human tasting the wine that gives it some context against the other wines that you carry as a product range. So when you've got 900 products, you can say, well, these 25 products might be products that you really like based upon the fact that we know that you really like this. And what we find is that really drives an exceptional value add to the customer and obviously drives additional sales, which is crucial to this.
Just before we move to Jose, does that affect the way you buy wine as well, your ranging decisions?
Yeah, it's starting to. So it's not just, I was saying to Jose before, we've been around for 25 years. We've sold, 150 million bottles of wine. And every single one of those bottles, because we are purely online, has been rated by our customers. Now, the importance of ratings is, as Andrew said earlier on, is what you might like isn't necessarily an indicator of it not being a good product. It just means that it's not to your personal profile. It's not to your personal taste. So giving that context is crucial to us because, we could have some fantastic wines that, the wrong customers have tried, right? They just don't particularly like that particular taste. Doesn't mean that it's a bad wine, but it could bring the rating down. Likewise, some not so good wines could get high ratings just because it really connects with the particular customers that have tried them. So really bringing this into it gives us the ability to cross-connect those two data sets. And I think kind of moving forward, we're in a much better position to actually say, well, these customers are really going to love these products and these customers might not. and then we can start to position them much better that way.
So, Jose, can you tell us a little bit about your business? And you've got some bricks and mortar aspects as well. So it'd be really interesting to know then how this sort of technology applies in the physical environment.
Yeah, exactly. So at Vinarte, we only have physical shops, so totally different business than Virgin. And when I started at Vinarte 1.5 years ago, I realized that our sommeliers in the shops, they are very, very different in what they recommend. And it was hard to get them on board on one specific type of recommendations, so the whole company can actually be more heterogenic. And I was researching a bit, and I actually found Preferably, and it's I sent them a cold email from Switzerland to New York, and now we are in the process of implementing an app. And so the Preferably app will be basically our customer loyalty program, where when they buy, well, first of all, they get the recommendations that Andrew said. It's fantastic. They can, before they go to the shop, I am cooking today pork and lettuce and I don't know, some pasta with it. What is a good red wine to it? And then within our stocks, we can recommend the best red wine to it. And then whenever they bought a certain amount of wines, then the Preferably app or the AI knows which kinds of products that the customer likes. And then, of course, the customer is more hooked into our assortment because they always get better and better and better recommendations. And so that's the idea. We haven't implemented it yet, but we're full steam in actually implementing it, because I see this is the future of the wine recommendations, even offline.
What do your sommeliers on the shop floor think of this?
So that was actually why we decided for the app. It was quite before we found the way how to implement it, we did have a little bit of a discussion how to communicate it to the sommelier, because that's a little bit of a sensitive topic, because the sommelier might think, well, they want to replace me, when in reality, I want to enhance their ability to recommend. And because, of course, the sommelier, he can also use the Preferably app to recommend whatever wines. And so we came up with the idea to implement the app, because the sommelier wants the customer to have an app, so we are more connected within the system. And so that was a good way to communicate to them. We're going to implement it. It's going to be an app. There's going to be an AI to it. So your job is going to be easier, but you're not going to be replaced.
And as we can see from Andrew's demonstration, they could deliver the recommendation in the manner of a dismissive, snobby French sommelier, should they want to. At this point, I'm wondering whether we should do the next Scotch, and then I think we're going to move the topic on a little bit to money saving, dare I say it, and efficiencies. But Colin, could you introduce the next one? Thank you.
Thanks, Danny. Okay, so our second whiskey is also, it's a single cask. It's also from Speyside. It's also 25 years old, cask strength.
Thank you. Wow.
48.5. But there's a difference. This is Uthrusk Distillery, but it's also been finished in sherry. So it's taking a base of ex-bourbon casks that are probably 21, 22 years old, and then it's finishing them in ex-sherry casks. So it's adding sherry as a component to the flavor of that. So there should be the same sort of sweetness that one was getting in the first one, but then you can taste these sort of baking spices and I get little bits of dark chocolate, for example, and some fruitcake. Those are the typical things one would get from a sherry cask. And that's sort of added into the mix. Hasn't totally taken away from the ex-bourbon that it's originally matured in, but it's just added flavor. So it's a mix of the two. And that's 25-year-old Uthrusk.
Thank you very much, Colin. So Jose touched on that point that I think so many of us feel and fear a little bit with the development of technology. Certainly, I won't talk about the fears that we have in publishing, but you said that some of your staff on the shop floor were nervous about what this tech was doing. What I'd be really interested to know, maybe from you first, Danny, is there is a pressure on margins, particularly in the wine industry. We know what the inflationary pressures are doing to the cost of production and how the consumer feels in terms of their mood and their disposable income about price increases. So how can this technology be used to save costs, and maybe in that, whose jobs are at threat?
Yeah, it's again, I mean, I had a similar experience with our masters of wine as well. But I think the thing is, if you're able to enhance your workforce and their capabilities, that really is a positive. I mean, we use it for everything from art and design concepts, label designs, forecasting, predictive analytics. We're talking about using it for supply chain. Just simple things like, weather patterns around the world can have, adverse effects on crops. And we produce wine from winemakers all over the world. So understanding how that supply chain boils down to what we're going to get in terms of product and meeting demand and so on is really crucial for us. So that's a really important aspect. But then even stuff like content creation, we're using ChatGPT to help refine our content using things like tone of voice. And that really speeds up the teams in making sure that the copy and content is going out much more rapidly as well. As I said, image production and helping produce much higher quality visuals, label designs, and a whole range of things around that. And then now we're starting to look at how customer segmentation and product categorization and the way that we kind of package our wines up to different customer groups. So there's a whole range of areas to make, just huge efficiencies essentially.
It's so much faster. Yeah. Jose, some thoughts from you, and then Andrea, I must get yours.
Well, everything what Danny said applies also for like offline business. I'm gonna add two more things. One is, of course, when the sommelier in shops gives a recommendation, we will give the recommendations of higher margin products. So that just gives us a higher margin just because we're able to steer a little bit the recommendation. And if the sommelier recommends something where we have like 45% of margin instead of 40, that's of course at scale, it's massive. So that's one big thing. And the second thing is, so I am from Switzerland. Our business is in Switzerland. We have very high wages, and to train our sommeliers, like each hour costs us a lot. With AI, we can massively reduce the amount of time where we train our sommeliers, and maybe for one person in the shop, that's not a lot, but in scale, it's a massive cost reduction where we have there.
So Jose maybe inadvertently has hit on something that I think is interesting and maybe a little bit unnerving, but it's a really good point, which is that I think something that people in the trade have a distrust of sommeliers in the sense that they don't recommend the wine that you might like the best, but the one that suits them to sell you.
But I'm going to answer.
Yeah, right, I'm going to answer. Because they're getting commission or they want you to spend more. And you're saying that the AI software might be doing the same thing. Andrew, yes, tell me.
So everything we deliver through different technical means, whether it be plugins, API calls, hosted mobile applications, hosted web applications. And within those, we customize the solution to the business logic of the merchant, what they're trying to achieve. So let's take one of our restaurant clients. They have 22 steakhouse restaurants across the United States. They have house wines. Their objective is to sell house wines because they make more money on them. But if you're not happy with it, then it costs them more money because lifetime value of a customer, they were unhappy with the recommendation. Often they're making tastes, they're pouring tastes, and that costs them a lot of money in wasted bottles. So one of the things we're able to do with our solution is think about collections of products and then make recommendations on a taste model basis within those collections. So in their world, they said, if possible, I'd like the first recommendation to be a private label or house wine. If it wouldn't be a good recommendation, then don't recommend it. Then fill in the rest of the recommendations with the rest of our inventory. So it's still looking at it from a taste base, but it's saying, I want to give preference to what's in these higher margin products if it would be a good recommendation. Not only did they find in the first 60 days of launching it that they had a massive increase in their wine sales, it was more house wines.
Right.
And in one location, which had the greatest uptake, so they have 22 locations and not every location had people pushing the software the same way. In the location that had the highest, they had the lowest amount of free tastings that they've had across their locations across the board, which saved them a ton of money. So it's a way to both achieve an objective, save costs on training, save costs on free tastings, increase margin that you're making, but still remain true to the integrity of the algorithms, which are only recommend what would be a good taste recommendation.
Okay. Now, before we taste the next scotch, I just want to take the conversation to something that interests me and I hope interests you, but both of you have come from outside the drinks industry, and I made the maybe unfair insinuation earlier that we are behind other sectors. But I'd like to know from both of you in turn, maybe you, Jose, and then Danny, turn it on his head because I picked on you first last time, and find out you're in organic baby food, you're now in booze. Are we more behind other industries? Is it easier or harder to apply this sort of technology to drinks than other sectors?
So I had quite a fun discussion with Daniel on this topic. So when I started at Vinarte 1.5 years ago, there was still a lot of pen and paper stuff going on, like in the shops, in the supply chain. And so the last 1.5 years, I basically spent like getting rid of pen and paper and just digitalizing the company. But now, that's of course an opportunity, because like when you digitalize, you can just put the fancy stuff on top, like AI, and so it's in the head of the company, or like in the perception of the company as well. It's more part of digitalization, so it's easier to implement it. So that's the advantage. However, I do think that in general, the wine industry is not very digitalized, and so especially in AI, we're like very, very behind. We're very behind.
Danny?
I'm dying, yes. Hugely behind. The fashion industry 20 years ago started launching mobile apps, started getting into algorithmic AI, so very early AI, looking at how it could recognize patterns of buying habits and customers and marketing and all of this kind of stuff. And looking, and certainly Virgin Wines is one of the top tiers online retailers in the UK, and the entire industry at that level is probably 10, 15 years behind the rest of the industry in terms of e-commerce. So when you're looking at the way that the technology is used both within the companies and the way it connects with the consumer is quite far behind. But that makes it really exciting. I think with the way technology is moving now, and certainly technology such as Preferably, we've got a real chance to play catch up now with the wider industry and really turn the dial on that for sure.
Okay, so you heard it here first. We're 10 to 15 years behind. I think that is exciting. I'll spin it that way. Colin, could we have your last scotch before we look at the last topic and wrap up? Thank you. Assuming it is scotch.
Okay, on to our last whiskey. So we started with an ex-bourbon single cask. We've gone on to a single cask that's been finished in sherry. And this is a blend of ex-bourbon casks and ex-sherry casks that have also been slightly peated. The spirit was peated in the first place. And this is a 21-year-old Ben Riach from Speyside. It's 46%, so it's quite similar to the other two. And it should, yes, still has the sweetness of the ex-bourbon still there. There are the aromas of the sherry casks still there. There's a spice. And then you have that smoke. And it's being a mainland peated whiskey, It doesn't have the iodine that you would expect from the coastal Islay whiskies and so on. It's sweeter overall. That happens to be my favorite sort of flavor profile, although I do like the Islay whiskies. But this has that sweet peat. So it's both smoky, sweet smoke, peat, sherry, and bourbon, sort of all in a glass. And I think that that's extremely successful. I hope you like it, as well as having the rare 25-year-old single casks beforehand.
Thank you. It's nice to hear you talk about Scotch. You make it so clear, it's unpretentious, and and the descriptions are so apparent in the glass. So obviously you're no longer needed because AI can do it for you. So it's nice to give you a platform here until we're all out of work. The last topic I wouldn't mind looking at before just general crystal ball gazing is, I think, is a bit of a hot topic in the trade. I think probably any discussion like this ought to be raised for good reason, which is a look at the whole drive towards sustainability in the business. Now, quite often that is, let's be honest, driven by efficiency gains to save money. But what I'm interested to know is how AI can help us in our move to become more sustainability, whether that's to supply chain efficiencies, things like carbon accounting. Who shall I start with? You're nodding your head, Danny. Maybe if you can start, and then we'll go through and get an opinion from each of us before we wrap up.
Yeah, so I think there are a multitude of ways. I mean, the first one obviously is efficiencies, getting the right products for the customer. I mean, not having to, short sell products because you've brought the wrong lines, because you know what your customers are really after, is crucial within that. But also looking to see whether there are efficiencies in terms of the way packaging, shipping, handling, all of that kind of stuff. One of the things that we were looking at was packing if I can say the word, packing algorithmic analysis to see how we can more effectively get more on shipping containers to get more delivered globally. And just simple stuff like that can have an enormous effect if more and more people are doing it. So there really are a number of ways it would help, for sure.
And of course, I didn't make the point, but it should be stressed that sustainability includes economic sustainability. After all, you're not a sustainable business if you're not profitable. So those sorts of savings, they're quite unsexy to talk about, but if AI can deliver them, they're crucial for the future success of our trade. Jose, what about you?
So for us, social sustainability is number one in our business, and we are not tying it right now a lot to like the AI components. However, of course, it would be very good if we have a overview of all the suppliers in the world who actually have like the most social, like who is the most social sustainable. Also, when you go to certain countries, you never know how the farmers' conditions are, and it would be fantastic to have a database easily accessible and also very transparent behind it. But right now we're more working with labels, but it's a little bit of a pain. So there's definitely efficiency gains to be had in this regard.
Andrew, do you want to add anything on this topic?
Yeah, I actually would tie it back a little bit also to the last topic. One of the reasons why I think this industry has been historically behind technologically is also related to the same question, which is the data has been really poor in this industry. We could not build what we built by scraping the internet. It's one of the reasons why ChatGPT and Claude have a really hard time in this space, because the data is not accurate. It's not consistent. Some of the definitions are very hard to translate across. Is something natural or not natural? Is it biodynamic? Is it sustainable? And so one of the things that we've committed to, not only independently developing the most comprehensive database of wine, spirits, food across the world, but also to include within that the sustainability metrics. So we are partnering with the Sustainability Roundtable, things around bottle weights, packaging formats, so that we can start to, just like I said before, where we can say what would be the base taste alternative in the high margin. Well, you could also say what is the best taste alternative in the most sustainable products that we offer. So it is a way to bring accurate and meaningful data to bear, and AI is great at doing that if you build that data, and that's part of why we exist in this ecosystem.
At this point, I'd like to open up to the floor. Has anyone got any burning questions that they want to pose to our panelists?
You pick what I said before, yeah?
Yeah.
Particularly a large retail, when it comes to make a choice, is very intuitive. We don't have the sommeliers, we don't have the advice. And it is either through brand loyalty or packaging plays a big role. So I'd like to understand, particularly if you already use this model on industries, what's the implications on packaging? Because you mentioned now sustainability and preferences. I would imagine this will suggest different formats. And how is this feedback to design teams, and where is this going? I'm particularly interested because I work for packaging. So is it really, is this going to break into the point that we expect the decision makers just going to be flavor-led, or?
What's amazing about data, I'm a data junkie, right? So at its core, I wake up every day and I think about data more than I think about code. I think about how do you take interactions, how do you take experiences and distill it down into data that is of use. So one of our modules, for example, is a hosted web solution. The example I used with the restaurant before, that's what they have. You snap a QR code, it launches a web browser on your phone, and the guest right there at the table can, get food pairings, pick wines that they would like and find alternatives, and they can go through a guided recommendation. And the guided recommendation asks a series of questions, not the gimmicky ones that you see on the internet about, do you put sugar in your coffee and eat mushrooms and somehow we're going to predict whether you like a wine, but really the questions that an expert would ask. Fuller, lighter bodied, what do you feel about certain fruits? Are there certain aromas you like? Are there certain regions you care for? And what we find is not only is the data very useful because it generates recommendations, but it also gives data for in this case, restaurant, but also retailers. Danny's group is launching this, that it actually gives them information about what are the aspirations of a customer. So if sustainability is important, if natural biodynamic is important, if kosher is important, if, gluten-free is important, if in the products where gluten comes into play, having that knowledge of what is the aspirational intent of the customer can help shape some of those decisions around what would be good alternative packaging. Maybe some of these products people would prefer in smaller multi-format packaging or in boxes or whatever that may be. So we don't push it on people, but it's really about creating tools that enable people to learn and collect the information that helps them make better decisions.
Hope that helps. And there was another question here.
I'm looking into your business model, and what are your aspirations on? Are you going to be in the back end of other businesses, or are you planning to take over for Vivino in the future, or where are you going?
We are powered by Preferably. We are Intel Inside. We are a core software as a service business. We don't sell product. We don't take inventory. We don't push certain products based on who's advertising the most to us. We are an objective arbiter of preference. So we license our software to restaurants, retailers, grocery retailers, importer distributors, suppliers, anyone in the supply chain that wants to better connect the customer with products on the basis of what would be the most appealing to them.
So you're the data geeks that have developed it, and then you've got the experts to help you hone it.
Exactly.
And just to follow up, you collect data. How do you collect data in the first place, and how do you get, the different data sets inside of every product? And how do you relate these to other products, which is interesting for us to know?
Yeah. So I'll start by the second half, which is on the product, which is the Collins and our team of masters of wine and master sommeliers that go through and literally catalog product by product, vintage by vintage, up to 800 attributes and traits that describe how they taste. On the other side, we have certain solutions that are based entirely on not knowing a customer. Similar tasting product that I showed, We don't need to know who the customer is. We're working with a single data point like an expert. If you said, I like this wine, what other wine would you recommend? That's what they're doing in their head. Guided recommendation, we ask a series of questions, we gather that and use that to generate recommendations. When you do know the customer, we can actually ingest that data. So purchase histories, sales histories, search histories, return histories. Virgin will take back a wine that you didn't like. All of that information can be used, and we build an individual profile of each customer based on that. We are a data processor, all you European GDPR lovers of the world. We are a data processor for you. We do not commingle merchant data. We do not sell, consumer data to other people. We are in the business of helping you understand your customer. So now that similar tasting product isn't just what tastes the same, and you would like it. Instead of just saying what goes well, this food and which wines, it's what wine would go best for Andrew with his preference for lasagna and he's looking for a red wine. So there's a lot of, in fact, 3 of our, now soon to be 4 of our patents are entirely in the space of privacy and security of collection and customer data, because we knew from the very beginning, wine and spirits, alcohol consumption is something that people don't want to share like the way that they do on Facebook or Instagram. So we wanted to make sure that we built a solution that can deliver value, answer questions without over disclosing anyone's information in a way that's creepy.
Thank you.
Good questions.
Talking about data, on the one hand, there is this sometimes intimidating situation to ask a SOM for his or her recommendation. And on the other hand, you have people that have a lot of respect for tools, or even they are afraid of using tools. What do the numbers say on the usage of SOMs in the shop maybe, and online, and in the restaurants?
We are not here to replace people, but rather elevate that conversation. So in the case of the restaurant, for example, we'll present in the guided recommendation 3 results, because that restaurant wants no more than 3 results. In retail, we might present 20. Depends. We don't say, here's the one wine, drink it. Here are 3 choices that we think would be the best. Now the conversation between the waiter or the SOM and the guest is, of those 3, which would you recommend? This is what we're having as a collective. Or, have you had this lately? So instead of the conversation being, I like red wine, I like smooth wine, whatever that means, I like dry wine, those kinds of questions give such limited information, where what we find is that the data that's being able to be collected, because it is in an anonymous, unintimidating way, people are willing to give that information, and it leads ultimately to a higher level of conversation. And I'll just throw one other point out, which I think is really interesting statistic. Most restaurants or on the floor, what happens? First question, red or white, right? Second question, what is it? How much do you want to spend, right? In one of our use cases, a lot of users, 20% selected a price as a filter metric in their question. Don't give me something more than X. That meant 80% of the time, people wanted something aspirationally. What would be the best recommendation? And then let me decide if I like the price or not. And so the nature of that dialogue, it's really about elevating it as opposed to limiting it.
In our wine shops, I know 40% of people go into the shop and they ask the sommelier for any recommendation. For those 40%, we want to elevate the conversation. The rest, 60%, they do not talk to the sommelier. I don't have the numbers yet. However, I would say at least 1/3 of the 60%, so like 20%, for sure will use the app or the AI to ask for any recommendation. And I guess that number could go up even higher. But in general, everything what Andrew says is exactly what we're aspiring for, to like elevate those that actually talk to the sommelier, and even those that don't talk to the sommelier also elevates their knowledge.
I think just one final thing on this would be customers want value from you. And the more that you can offer value to the consumer, I think the better the experience for them. And there's nothing worse for a consumer than choosing a wine that they think they're going to like or they don't really know, and then they don't enjoy it, right? And we know because we offer money-back guarantee on every single bottle we sell. But it isn't just about, we're making a loss when someone doesn't enjoy a wine. It's not a good experience for the consumer. So the more we can add value to that experience to get the consumer the right, to help them make the right choice, it just makes it a much better experience. And given the scale that we both operate at, it's impossible for us to do that for every single consumer. So using these kind of technologies really helps with that. I think one final thing as well, talking to a sommelier is a barrier for a lot of customers. I drink wine, but I'm not brave enough to go and talk to a sommelier, right? I'm a technology expert, I'm not a wine expert. And to be able to go onto a website and get a really good experience from the website by just putting in some very simple non-personal data is a great experience for me. Earlier on, I was using the guided recommendation tool. Now, as I said before, we have over 900 products. I know the wines that I like, and I went on to the recommender tool today, and I saw wines that I didn't even know we stocked, but were literally making my mouth water, and I can't wait to go and try them. So for me, being in that and being able to get that value out of the data is really helpful.
Good. Thanks, like Devil's Advocate. What about the issue, the role, well, for actually maybe more for you as well, Danny, of price offers? Because I always feel that people in shops who don't ask for recommendations because they're looking for a deal. Is that a shortcut or not?
Maybe because we are a little bit more of a premium wine company. There's still this price aspect, but first of all, the prices that our customers ask are not as low. So in Switzerland, like most of them ask for a wine like around 30 francs, which is like quite a lot of money for a wine. But so for us, it's not so relevant, I would say.
This is a really, really good point. So one of the real key aspects of AI that I think is really interesting is dynamic pricing, but not dynamic pricing to benefit you as the supplier, but dynamic pricing to benefit the consumer. I think that's where you start to build a really strong trusting relationship. And that's the area that I'm quite keen on seeing. So actually driving it much more for the consumer's benefit.
So, because my last question is going to be, what's next from each of you? What is the technology? What are you working on today that'll be useful for tomorrow? But it might be interesting a little bit about how that works and why that'll make a difference.
Yeah. So I don't know, if I'm sure some of you have come across it, things like reverse auctions and those kinds of things. We've tried those in the past and they're a little bit gimmicky. But we have so many customers that have been with us for years. I mean, we're 25 years in the trade now, and some of our customers have been with us for that long. And there is this consistent theme of just, suppliers always seeming to try and take more, get more from their best customers. Actually, I think there's much more in that about actually being able to drive the relationship back the other way to improve that loyalty by really using AI to fine-tune a balance between what we need to make in terms of margins, but what's really good for the consumer rather than going the other way of trying to hike the price. So I think for us, that's the future for us, I think.
So I just had a talk before this panel discussion about what is the next thing to come, and might be also with the same company because we're also not like trying to sell more to the customer, but to enhance the experience. And I think like me, for example, I enjoy wine most when I go to Tuscany and have like a nice red wine in Tuscany with the wine producer. And so this taking a technology to enhance experiences within the drinks section, whatever it is, that's going to be our next step.
Yeah. And I mean, trying to sell more, I suppose, would be deemed irresponsible, but it's not working because people aren't drinking more anyway. So you might as well give them something else. Andrew, what's next?
So for us, I would put it into 3 buckets. The generative AI example you saw earlier, that is in beta right now. So we will be moving that out into the market, as well as expanding our current offerings, which are wine, beer, whiskey, tequila, mezcal, and cheese to include vodka, rum, gin, and sake. The other big thing, though, at the end of the year, we acquired another company. We actually just rebranded it yesterday, give or take, called Tastefully. So Tastefully by Preferably. And Tastefully is about experiences in wine and spirits, focused right now on Napa Valley, but we look to bring it to other markets, whether it be, Germany, Italy, England, Scotland with the whiskey, so that we can actually help connect people with experiences that they would like most based on their taste preferences. So now when you go and you visit Napa Valley, it's not just which wineries can I get a tasting seat at, it's which wineries would have the best choices and would fit within your schedule with the hot air balloon ride you're taking and the luxury car rental that you're engaging in, or the bike trail that you're going on.
I think it's fantastic. I think it plays exactly into what you're talking about. What I would like to do is sum up there, because we've been an hour. We said we'd be about 3/4 of an hour. The panelists, I don't think, are racing off anywhere, and they'd be very happy to take further questions. And I suppose all I can say, I actually had some chat GPT ditties about AI, but I don't really feel like really reading them out because they're so cringeworthy, but they amuse me. But I think for me, what's really exciting is that if the drinks trade is, as Danny says, a whole decade behind other industries, and we're already doing this much, it's a very exciting place to be. And I'm glad that I'm part of it. So thank you very much. Thank you to our experts. Thank you to Preferably. And thank you to you for joining us.